Okay, welcome to our third video of head measurement here. When I printed mine off, mine came off on 3 different pages, but we're starting here with measured the circumference of the head and mark, and your actual circumference then on my copy actually came off clear at the end, but it should be this one here. Now, I'm going to walk you through this, but I want to point out something first before I get started. So I'm going to start at the nasion. I'm going to measure all the way around the circumference of the head, take that measurement, and mark at the back of the head the halfway mark. So whatever I get for that measurement, if I were to get 50 centimeters, then at 25 is where my OZ is going to be back here. Now, according to your textbooks and according to the official 1020 system, you would then take 5% of the entire circumference and measure out from your OZ to get O2 and O1. Well, 5% of 50 is going to be 2.5. Now, a much easier way to do this math is to use halves and 10% as opposed to the full part and 5%. So what I'm saying is I'm going to measure all the way around, take that number and put it in half. Let's say I measure 50 all the way around, so I'm going to mark half at 25. I'm going to measure out to the left 10% of 25, which will be 2.5, and then I'm going to measure out to the right 10% of my half, which again is going to be 2.5. I'm going to do that on the back, and I'm going to do that on the front. So rather than using 5% of the whole measurement, I'm using 10% of half the measurement. It's simply to do easy math, folks. That's my only reason for doing that. And I do that with some other measurements you'll see too. Okay, so our very first step here, and I've already marked mine because my glass head has a nice seam right down the middle of it. Now when you get in a sleep lab and you're measuring a real patient, God didn't give us seams down the middle of our face. So you have to kind of eyeball the middle of their head. An alternative were if they had eyebrows, you could measure from one eyebrow here to this eyebrow, take the middle 50% of that and make your mark in the middle of the head, and then adjoin it to the hash mark you already made when you measured up 10% from the nasion. So that's going to be our first reference point. What we're going to do is we're going to line our tape measure up to the bottom of that line, get our zero right at where we found the middle of their face to be, and we're going to try to go under the measurements we already have for T3, T4, and for the one we started back here for OZ. Now my glass head, my tape measure slips and moves, so I'm going to try to use my arms and everything here to hold it in place. Trying my best. Okay, I think I'm below everything. Oh, and it moved. And I get 56. Okay, so half of my 56 is going to be 28. And I'm going to mark that right here in the back. 28. Now, since I have gone all the way around the head and verified the placement of my tape measure, I'm going to go ahead and use it to mark 10% up from my inion around the back here. So I'm just going to extend that line out like that. Okay, so what I'm left with is right here is OZ, okay, and then I need to go out 10% to the left and 10% to the right to get my O1 and O2. So 10% of 28 is 2.8. And now I have this hash mark here. So right there where those two lines meet is where my O1 electrode will go. Now I'm going to do the same for the right. Go out 2.8. And again, I'm going to use the line that's already there for my other hash mark. So here is O2 or O1 and here's O2. Now we're going to come to the front of the head and we're going to ignore my eyebrows and we're going to do the same thing. Go out 10% from the middle, so it's 2.8. And again, since I'm lining it up with this line that I already went all the way around the head and made sure it was in alignment with all my other sites, I can go ahead and use my tape measure now to make a hash mark parallel with it. But it's only because I've already measured all the way around my head and I know that that's where that line should be. And again, I'm going to do 2.8 over here. Okay, so right where these two lines intersect, this would be my FP2, and right where these two lines intersect would be my FP1, left side, right side. Okay, next we're going to go from FP1 below T3 and back to O1, and I'm getting about 22.5 here. 22.25, so we're going to go with right at about 11.1. And so you see here's my T3 and here's where I made that hash, so I'm just going to extend my T3 out. Geez, I'm making a horribly squiggly line. Your line should be much straighter than that, sorry folks. And right where those two intersect, oh, that's horrible. That's where my new reference point is. I'm going to use this reference point to make another reference point, F7, excuse me. So again, I'm going to go from FP1 to my T3, and it looks like I'm like right at 11.5 for that. What? Oh, no, right at 11. So half of 11 is 5.5, so that's going to be right here. And again, this is my 10% line all the way around my head, so I can use my tape measure to make that hash. Now we're going to come over here and do the same thing on the right side. Again, start at FP2, which is right here. Try to come under my T4 to my O2, and I get again 22.25-ish. I'm going to do like 11.1, and then again I'm going to just extend this line because that's my 10% line. There's my new reference. I'm going to measure from my FP2 to my T4. Ooh, this one's a little off there. I got 12, so I'm going to go with it. Let's use half of that, so I'm going to have 6. So 6, and then use my tape measure because that's my 10% line all the way around my head. Alrighty. So in this step, we went all the way around the head. We took half of that to finish our reference mark OZ. We took 10% of that number and went out to the left to get O1. We took 10% of that number to go out to the right to get O2. Then we went to the front, went out 10% to the right to get FP2. Went out 10% to the left to get FP1. I just said those backwards, by the way. This is the left, that's right. Then I went from FP1 all the way to O1, took half of it to get this reference mark. Then I went from FP1 to this reference mark and took half of it to get F7. Then I did the same thing on the right side. I went from FP2 all the way to O2, marked halfway to get T4. Then I went from FP2 to T4, marked halfway to get F8. This concludes our step 3 of our head measurement.